This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Emerging market stocks fell 0.2% today. That's after briefly touching a fresh three-month high in early trading. That is as markets in Asia were set for a pretty choppy session. And of course, China blue chip stocks slipped 0.6% today. South Africa's JSE falling almost 2%, ending a 7-day winning run. All the main indices, including resources, industrials and banks, were all lower today. The resource index was down the most, almost 3%. Now, also coming up on today's show. Exxon Mobil surrenders its entire interest in Ghana's Deepwater Cape, a 3 points offshore block. Victory for UK's Tesco workers as court rules in favour of equal pay. And a new way to sort out electronic waste in Africa. Well, tonight we start off in Ghana. American oil and gas giant Exxon Mobil is pulling out of a deep water oil prospect in the country. Now, this comes just 2 years after the country ratified an exploration and production agreement with the U.S. oil titan. The company has relinquished its entire stake in the Deepwater Cape 3-point block and resigned as its operator after fulfilling its contractual obligations during the initial exploration period. Now, the sale is considered to be a part of a shift in the company's West Africa strategy, with, of course, Savannah Energy having announced that it is in talks with Exxon to acquire its assets in Chad and Cameroon. Now, world health leaders are meeting in Oxford, hoping to reach a deal to help reduce the risk of global pandemics and other threats to health. G7 ministers want to improve early detection of animal-borne diseases and ensure poorer nations that get more access to COVID vaccines. Here's Andrew Wilson reporting from Oxford.
Summer 2021 is turning into a global balancing act of competing priorities surrounding this pandemic. The unpredictability of coronavirus variants has tempered some of the international confidence in the global vaccination programme. The G7 leaders will descend on the UK next week to thrash out differing positions on international travel, healthcare cooperation, data sharing and the importance of robust clinical standards. And they'll find that even with its world-beating vaccine programme, the British government has just taken the last remaining holiday destination, Portugal, off its safe travel list. Even on the steps of the G7 Health Ministers Summit in Oxford, the government message was sounding familiar.
Well, we do have to be careful about international travel, and the Delta variant is just one new variant, another new variant, and it shows why it's right to be careful about international travel. And countries around the world have learnt the importance of that, including us here in the UK. So that's something we look at very carefully, and I fully respect the fact that my counterparts across the world also look very carefully at that sort of at international travel, and they're right to do so.
At the summit, the agenda includes global health security, data sharing and clinical trials, but will be dominated by vaccines, equitable vaccine supply and international vaccine production, especially with the guest countries India, South Korea, South Africa and Australia joining the debates remotely. There's a lot of pressure, including from Washington now, to allow other countries to produce the successful vaccines, AstraZeneca, Moderna and Pfizer, in their own plants. Britain and Germany, however, are still against it. But with the variants persisting in slowing timetables and reducing confidence, all the medical community still has to offer is that one solution: immunise the world's population. And that was never going to be easy. Andrew Wilson, CGTN, Oxford.
Now, Amazon, which plans to establish a new 70,000 square meter Africa headquarters in South Africa, is now facing potential opposition from the indigenous Khoi and San people. Construction is slated for later this month in Cape Town, but local communities and activists fear the loss of an important heritage site.
U.S. retail giant is set to establish its Africa headquarters in Cape Town, South Africa. It earmarked $284 million for a mixed-use development complete with a hotel, retail offices and residential units. But the location presents potential for conflict with the locals. A century and a half ago, Dutch settlers launched a campaign for land dispossession, a bitter history that seems to be revived by Amazon's interest to set up shop there.
The threat of the monolith of Amazon on the embankments of our most sacred floodplains will not be accepted by our communities. This is a place where the first frontier wars were fought. It is a ground zero precinct. And what we want is a World Heritage Site.
The 37 acres riverside property was previously home to a golf driving range and a popular bar. A small blue plaque, the only indication of its historical significance. According to the Observatory Civic Association, close to 50,000 objections to the development have been lodged so far.
So the development has secured the approvals it needs. It's got a rezoning of the land, and it's got an environmental authorization. That is despite many and multiple objections and appeals, which were essentially ignored. So the only recourse now is to go to court.
Land, its history and ownership are highly fraught issues in South Africa, where memories of forced removals and segregation remain fresh nearly 3 decades after the end of the racist apartheid regime. Project developers say the development will create thousands of new jobs while also paying tribute to Khoi and San culture and history. But environmentalists and activists are opposed to the development.
Our freedom was not brought about by Amazon. Our liberty was not brought about by Amazon. Our spaces of significance was brought upon by the blood of our ancestors and the sacrifices of Korana.
Amazon declined to comment on the dispute and referred queries to the project's developer, Zenprop, which in turn directed them to Lesbeck Leisure Properties Trust. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, let's now go back to one of our top stories today. In Ghana, American oil and gas giant Exxon Mobil is pulling out of a deepwater oil prospect. Of course, this comes just 2 years after the country ratified an exploration and production agreement with the U.S. oil titan. Now, the company has relinquished its entire stake in the block and also resigned as its operator. Let's find out more on this from Nabil Ahmed Rufai. He now joins us in Accra. Great to have you with us, as always, Nabil. Now, of course, Exxon Mobil says that it's pulling out of Ghana as it prioritizes other projects in countries such as Brazil and, of course, its home country of the U.S. Any more insight into the reasons behind this decision? And certainly, what has been Ghana's government response to this?
Well, Uche, Exxon Mobil has not come out to clearly state its reason for pulling out of Ghana, although, as you rightly said, it says it wants to concentrate on areas where it already has presence, which is Brazil and the U.S. But we know that with this particular project, it has 80% stake in this particular project and had already started works, but then did not start any drilling of oil until it's pulled out. And the response here in Ghana is that the government is thinking that perhaps due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which took a toll on a lot of businesses, the company may be having challenges with funding of this particular project, which could be the reason for the pulling out of Ghana. That's what the government is saying. The Ministry of Energy has actually come out to say that this is what it thinks, that perhaps the challenges with funding could be a major reason why ExxonMobil is pulling out of Ghana. And the government has said that it does not think that ExxonMobil has had issues in terms of maybe the fact that there may not be any oil to be produced from this particular site that they were exploring. But then it has assured people that indeed there are a lot of oil to be explored in the country, and with Exxon Mobil out, they are now looking to attract other investors to continue with this particular project. Uche.
Well, Nabil, of course, this pullout from Exxon, it has caused some worry in Ghana's oil and gas sector, especially after experts are warning that oil production in the country will decline if no new production capacities are added soon. So give us a sense of the impact this decision from Exxon will have on Ghana's oil and gas targets going forward.
Well, Uche, you know, it's going to really have a dire impact on Ghana's, oil and gas production because you know that the country relies heavily on the proceeds from oil and gas for its developmental projects. Last year, for instance, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, there was the shortfall in prices of crude really affected Ghana because it's targeted to rake in about $1.5 billion from oil production, but then it ended up getting around $600 million. So you can see that this particular project with the Exxon Mobil, which was supposed to be in the works, which is not happening at the moment, is really affecting the country, which is why the government is really keen in looking at other investment opportunities to continue with this project. So indeed, it's such a big blow to the country that it had to lose this big company, Exxon Mobil, from its plans of exploring more oil in the country.
Well, indeed, no oil field has been added in Ghana. And of course, Ghana is fairly new in this oil and gas game. At least we know no oil field has been added since 2018, when we saw the government organize block licensing rounds in the country. Give us an update on the progress made in Ghana's oil and gas sector so far since its discovery and the resulting exploration.
Uche, you know, Ghana relies mainly on 3 oil fields for its production at the moment, and the country was looking at getting a 4th oil production field, which has to do with the Pecan oil field, which is being headed, supervised by the Aker Energy Group. But then last year, this oil field was supposed to start production, but then the COVID-19 pandemic did not allow that to happen. And now Aker Energy is looking for investments to pump into this particular project. And there's been a report released by the Institute of Energy Securities here in Ghana, which says that it's not likely that this particular oil field, which is the Pecan oil field, would begin any production anytime soon because of the challenges that Aker Energy is facing with funding. And they are estimating that for this particular 4th oil field to begin production, we are looking at sometime 2 years from now, which is the year 2023. Aside this, there is these 2 other oil fields that have been in the works, the Sakwafa oil fields and the Afina oil and gas field, which are headed by the S&P company and also the Springfield S&P company and the ENI companies. Now, the government has been pushing for an agenda for these 2 companies to unitize in order to maximize their production of oil, but then it's not been able to get any main agreement from these 2 companies at the moment. But then they are thinking that if these 2 companies come together to unitize, they should be looking at producing about $8.2 billion of oil, whereas if they do it individually, they should be looking at around $2 billion. And deliberations are still ongoing to show up the country's production of oil if these 2 companies are able to merge and unitize. Uche.
Certainly slow progress in the sector there. Many thanks as always, Nabil, for that update. That, of course, is Nabil Ahmed Rufai joining us there in Accra. Well, on that note, let's now take a look at other corporate headlines today. China's Huawei has launched its Harmony operating system for smartphones. Now, this follows U.S. sanctions that disrupted its handset business. The Harmony OS offers users the chance to switch from the current operating system based on Google's Android platform. Now, Huawei is billing Harmony OS as an Internet of Things platform aimed at operating on and connecting other devices such as laptops, smartwatches, cars, and appliances. And the CEO of French telecom firm Orange has been summoned by the government after a network outage at the firm prevented emergency calls for several hours in France. French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin adds that one person in Brittany may have died because emergency services were not called soon. A spokesman for Orange says the incident was gradually resolved after various technical operations carried out by its team. And German automaker Volkswagen has launched a 5-year project in Astapalia, Greece, aimed at testing the adoption of electric vehicles. That's amid a switch to sustainable energy generation. The $25 million initiative will provide residents purchasing incentives to swap conventional vehicles for electric cars and scooters. Now, residents will also be given options to test ride-share applications and public transport models driven by customer demand instead of using fixed schedules and routes. And renowned British footballer David Beckham has invested in UK-based electric vehicle company Lunars. That comes as the company aims to grow its production and provide 500 highly skilled jobs by 2024. Now, Britain is expected to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2030. That's all part of its goal of cutting emissions to net zero by 2050. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's now take a short break, still coming up on the show. The International Monetary Fund to provide the Democratic Republic of Congo a loan of $1.5 billion. And commodity prices remain high in South Sudan despite gains made by the local currency on the US dollar.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, the International Monetary Fund has agreed to provide the Democratic Republic of Congo with a loan of $1.5 billion to help the country recover from the coronavirus pandemic. The agreement, which awaits the final approval of senior IMF officials, will mark the end of 2 years of negotiations between the DRC and, of course, the international lender. CGTN's Christo Chamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The IMF loan of $1.5 billion will be provided to the DRC over a period of 3 years once it's approved. A senior IMF official says it's meant to help the government reduce poverty and recover from the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the financing has conditions. The DRC is expected to make reforms in the central bank and be more transparent in running the mining sector. The IMF's agreement to provide the money is a major victory for DRC President Felix Tshisekedi, who is seeking to implement new policy reforms. The president ended a power-sharing deal with his predecessor Joseph Kabila last year and formed a new coalition government that he controls. IMF experts expect the DRC's economy to grow by 4.9% this year due to high copper and cobalt prices. The mining sector is the country's main export earner, but millions of Congolese are living in poverty due to conflict, disease, and corruption. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
And heading to Egypt now, the country has reached a funding agreement with the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development worth almost $370 million, and it is to develop the country's railway network. Now, the North African nation is currently undertaking a major refurbishment of its railway system after a spate of deadly accidents recently. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with more details from Cairo.
The World Bank loan is specifically targeting the railway line that runs through Egypt from Alexandria in the north to Naga Hammadi in the south. The 900-kilometer rail line has witnessed several deadly accidents recently, including a collision of 2 trains that killed over 19 people and injured hundreds in March.
The World Bank loan is geared towards developing the safety of the railway sector in Egypt. It's a very expensive project and needs huge budgets. The safety mechanism is aimed at preventing the reoccurrence of the tragic accidents that claim many victims. When we apply the safety measures and introduce new technology, we can guarantee a lower rate of accidents.
Egyptian officials say the loan will help set up over 700 new railroad crossings and about 1,300 signals that need replacing. But the problem is not just safety equipment, but human resources that will also need to be addressed.
Problems caused by human error date back long time when recruitment didn't focus on quality because salaries are very low and lack of capabilities. This resulted in unqualified workers who are error-prone, and that leads to so many accidents. They will need training. The Transportation Ministry is also reopening the Railway Wahdan Academy for high school students to enroll in the academy. This academy will produce well-skilled and qualified graduates who can improve the quality of workers in the railway sector and be open to latest technology and development.
The IBRD loan would cover about half of the $640 million budget needed to upgrade the Alex Naga Hammadi line alone. The upgrade is part of a $10 billion national project to overhaul the Egyptian railway system to better serve the 2 million passengers per day. It's expected to be ready by 2023. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, in South Sudan, commodity prices remain pretty exorbitant despite recent gains made by the South Sudanese pound against the US dollar. South Sudan's government this week started auctioning about $8 million per week to commercial banks and foreign exchange bureaus in order to strengthen the local currency and, of course, stabilize prices. But as CGTN's Patrick Oyet now reports, commodity prices still remain pretty high.
South Sudan depends largely on commodities imported from neighboring Kenya, Sudan and Uganda. Many residents in the capital Juba say prices of basic goods continue to rise.
Always when we try to ask the trader, they are telling us they are being overtaxed by the authority. City council take a lot of money from them. So when we ask them, can you reduce it? No, but the dollar has now come down. They said no, the dollar has come down, but the government, they are taking too much money from them. Central government, they are complaining, taking money, city council. So there's no way they can reduce the market, and they are being told to reduce the price. They cannot reduce it. So this is really the challenge we are seeing here. It's making life very difficult. The prices are going up. The salary is not being increased.
The government has not paid salaries for civil servants for months.
Now the dollar is losing value against South Sudanese pounds, but commodity prices are high. A sack of maize flour is more than my salary, let alone the other expenses like rent, medical bills and so on. The government should increase salaries for us civil servants, otherwise we cannot afford to live in this country.
South Sudan's government says it is trying to clear salary arrears for civil servants and will then review the payment structure. The East African landlocked country heavily depends on oil to finance its budget, but a reduction in oil production from 185,000 barrels per day to 170,000 barrels per day due to COVID-19 disruptions has negatively impacted revenue generation. The cost of different goods here also differs from one market to the other. South Sudan Central Bank says it is working to try and harmonize prices.
Our commitment to ensure that there is stability in the economy, that the exchange rate is stable, that the prices are stable, and of course, under the framework of peace, that there is peace in the country. That's the conducive, environment, business environment that allow economic sectors, including banks, to lend.
The government is also promising to engage traders to find ways of reducing prices to make life easier for South Sudanese who frequent markets like this one. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Now, foreign exchange demand for food imports in Nigeria has continued to rise, and that's despite the central bank ban to conserve forex and, of course, boost local production in the country. Now, food product imports gobbled up about $1.24 billion of the foreign exchange supplied by the Apex Bank between October 2020 to March 2021. Well, as CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam now reports, insecurity, weak infrastructure and disruption to supply chains are driving over-reliance on food imports.
38-year-old Ibrahim Kaura is a major rice dealer in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Due to the high demand for this staple food, Ibrahim buys between 600 to 1,200 bags of rice monthly. His major suppliers are farmers from northern Kano State.
Shortage in supply affects us mostly because the local supply isn't enough, because what they produce here can't go around nationwide, so most of the time what we do is to mix most of our product with imported rice. If you know that you have to get like 2 or 3 trucks of rice, you have to make an order before time. If you don't make an order, you will not get the product.
Nigeria's government placed a ban on forex for food and fertilizer imports. But despite the ban, food imports more than doubled in the last quarter of 2020. The figures rose to $1.24 billion in the fourth quarter, more than twice to the same quarter of 2019.
CBN has the power to say it's limiting, but to do it without consideration of the current economic reality will really be very tough. Before you ban, you need to first ensure you have created a platform for local industry to thrive. Some food items that are not properly done locally, you're going to see inflation.
Nigeria is an import-dependent nation. Food items like sugar, cereal, and fish are still imported in high volumes. This has been worsened by the recent spate of insecurity across the nation. Volumes of local food productions have significantly dropped.
Bandits, kidnappers have taken hostage of most of our farmers, and by extension, it becomes very difficult for farmers to go to farms. So because they can't go to farm, that has affected food outputs. With limited volume of food in circulation, Nigeria certainly needs to augment.
Boosting local food production would help Nigeria cut spending on food imports. But among other things, experts say it would require intensifying security efforts and ramping up a food processing chain, especially for storage and transportation infrastructure. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a short break now. Still coming up. Victory for UK's Tesco workers as a court rules in favour of equal pay. And more foreign banks to obtain a domestic fund custody license in China as the country continues to reform its economy.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now here's a quick recap of top headlines this hour. Pressure is mounting on Ethiopia to declare a ceasefire in the northern province of Tigray to allow humanitarian organizations to reach millions of people who face famine. Now the war in Tigray has disrupted harvests and led to huge problems for the delivery of aid to communities, particularly in rural areas. More than 2 million are thought to have been displaced by the conflict. And the Ugandan minister who survived an assassination attempt on Tuesday has been discharged from hospital. The former chief of defense forces and works minister, General Katumba Wamala, said he was feeling much better after surgery to remove bullets lodged in his arms. Now, his daughter and driver were killed in the attack by unknown gunmen riding on 2 motorcycles. And in Nigeria, officials from Niger State confirmed gunmen abducted 136 students from an Islamic school on Sunday. This number is lower than the estimate of 200 previously given by the federal government. Now, on Sunday, an armed gang on motorcycles attacked the town of Tegina. State officials contacted parents in the following days to ascertain the exact number of missing children. And civil society organizations and the health department in Tunisia are launching the first COVID-19 vaccination campaign for irregular migrants and refugees from sub-Saharan Africa. Hundreds of irregular migrants that fail to reach European shores will get inoculated. The campaign aims to provide the best health conditions at migrant hosting centers. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now, thousands of current and former employees of UK supermarket Tesco have won their fight for equal pay in a judgment from Europe's top court that could affect other retailers. Tesco found itself in the spotlight after about 6,000 current or former employees took their grievances to an unemployment tribunal in Watford. Now, they argued the company's shop workers, mostly women, had not received equal pay for equal work compared with its distribution workers, mostly men, since February 2018. in breach of EU and UK laws. Now, Tesco had argued an EU law defining equal pay for equal work or work of equal value was not directly applicable in this case. The UK tribunal sought guidance from the Luxembourg-based Court of Justice, which is Europe's highest, which rejected Tesco's arguments.
In case C 624/19, K and others, LMN and others, O, P, Q, R, S, T against Tesco Stores Limited, the Court Second Chamber hereby rules Article 157 TFEU must be interpreted as having direct effect in proceedings between individuals in which failure to observe the principle of equal pay for male and female workers for work of equal value, as referred to in that article, is pleaded.
Well, let's now get some more insight into this case from Emma McCarthy joining us in London. Great to have you with us today, Emma. Now, even though the European Union's top court did support Tesco's employees, what we hear is the case will now return to a UK employment tribunal. So does this mean that Tesco still has a fighting chance in the debate around equal pay for equal work in the UK?
Well, good evening to you. So as you've said, thousands of current and former Tesco employees won the support of Europe's Court of Justice in Luxembourg in their fight for equal pay on Thursday. And it all comes after these employees took their concerns to a UK employment tribunal. It sought guidance from the Court of Justice, which rejected Tesco's arguments. And that means it will now have to take the new ruling into account when it decides on the case. The Court of Justice said it had jurisdiction in accordance with Britain's withdrawal deal with the EU. The ruling is final and cannot be appealed.
Now, of course, Tesco's rival, Asda Group, it already lost a similar dispute in a UK court. So what does this all mean for retailers in the UK going forward and, of course, their bottom lines?
You're right. So back in March, workers at Asda supermarkets won a key victory in a long-running dispute over equal pay, with the UK's top court ruling that they can compare themselves to staff at the group's distribution centres. So Asda appealed to the Supreme Court against a 2019 judgment that lower-paid store staff, who are mostly women, could compare themselves with more highly paid distribution centre workers, who are mostly men, in pay claims. And that ruling followed defeats for Asda in UK employment tribunals. The full legal process could last several years, and it's certainly not good news for any retailer's bottom line. A law firm here in the UK that's representing 45,000 current and former shop floor staff at Britain's 5 biggest supermarkets estimate their potential liability is £8 billion, or about $11 billion. Tesco faces a bill of more than £2 billion alone.
Now, of course, the Tesco case, it returns to a UK employment tribunal, as we mentioned, and reports say that it is likely to take a while before we hear a final ruling. How long is this expected to take?
Well, a final decision on the Tesco case is certainly still a fair way off yet. A Tesco spokeswoman said, quote, "We reward our colleagues fairly for the jobs they do and work hard to ensure that the pay and benefits we offer are fair, competitive and sustainable. These claims are extremely complex and will take many years to reach a conclusion," adding that we continue to strongly defend these claims. Uche?
Well, we'll certainly continue to watch that. Many thanks, Emma, for your insights there. That's Emma McCarthy joining us there in London. And moving on now, China is gradually allowing more foreign banks to obtain a domestic fund custody license as part of efforts to reform its economy. Weilin Tang explains what this is and why it's an important piece of the jigsaw for China's financial opening up.
Shanghai already houses the world's top 10 asset management institutions, and the removal of foreign ownership limits in China since April 1st, 2020 has paved the way for more to enter the market.
China is opening,
and the cross-border connectivity is an important part to continue sustaining the significant growth of China. And it is not just about attracting the capital inflow, but actually the infrastructural support, right, and enablers behind that.
One example of this infrastructure comes in the form of domestic fund custody licenses.
When one mentions fund management, what comes to mind usually is the buying and selling of stocks, bonds, and other assets to generate returns. Now, what a custodian does is this. According to Deutsche Bank, custodians provide post-trade services for its institutional clients, and this includes clearing and settlement, client and regulatory reporting, as well as investment compliance monitoring solutions.
Previously, we only focus on bilateral investments, so the scope is kind of limited if you consider the size of the domestic market. So now with this license, we'll be able to provide the local custody and the clearing and the valuation to our local clients. With the relaxation of the China capital markets, we will be able to apply for more and more licenses.
Deutsche Bank was granted a domestic fund custody license in December 2020, making it only the third foreign player after Citibank and Standard Chartered to do so. For some perspective, there are about 50 custodians on the mainland. Previously, this space was occupied by local players.
It's a scalable business, and we also see it as a platform to build and grow our client relationship. So once we identified the client needs other than custody, we will connect the clients with our other piece of the business, so we create more cross-selling and group synergy.
Over a week ago, the Shanghai municipal government issued guidelines setting its sights on the city to become a leading global asset management center by 2025.
So we are talking about US 20 trillion AUM in the market, but behind that it's just starting to the whole structural transformation from the shadow banking landscape towards the professional asset management. So as you can imagine, a lot of the underlying fund administrative and also the custodian capability, right, that also need to keep up the pace to serve the whole transformation of the industry.
This transformation is needed as more complex product structures and asset classes enter China. And in the longer term, Ray says the local Chinese players will also need to elevate their capabilities to support these different types of capital. Wei Lin Tang, CGTN, Shanghai.
Now, in the U.S., California Governor Gavin Newsom recently declared a drought emergency for 41 of the state's 58 counties. For farmers, that means they'll be performing a delicate balancing act, conserving water while trying to produce enough food to meet demand. That also includes the grape growers in the winemaking region of Napa Valley. Our Mark New has more.
Napa Valley produces just 4% of California's wine grapes, but accounts for 27% of the California wine industry's total economic impact. It's a small but valuable region that continues producing under harsh conditions.
We faced a multitude of issues in the last year, obviously COVID being the one in everyone's mind. Fires have been a big impact here in the Napa Valley, but water is a huge concern, and that's really what we're facing right now. We're at about 40% of the average rainfall for the year.
The Honig family has been making wine on this land for more than 4 decades. Under drought emergency orders, Honig says his vineyard is prepared.
These little clusters right here are the grapes that we'll have in the fall.
And how much less water are you giving them right now?
We're giving them 0 water right now. So normally we would have given them a little bit of water to just kind of get them up to stay, kind of wake them up from the winter time. This year we've done any water. And the idea is not to give them any water. We're set up for drip in the event that we have to water, but the idea is not to use any water this year. And you can see from the ground cover, which is completely dried out now, normally this would have been a lot greener, but we're just letting that go as well. And what we've done is we've recently mowed it, and then what we're going to do is come through and disc this organic matter into the soils to create more healthy soils and also hopefully retain some of the water moisture that's currently in the soil.
Signs of the dry conditions from the drought are all over the grounds of the Honig vineyard, but their crop is surprisingly resilient. In fact, since 10 years ago, Honig estimates for their entire operations they now use 50% less water. Honig says thousands of these 230-liter barrels used to be filled up with water, rinsed, and then filled up again for cleaning. Now these machines steam clean the barrels, saving hundreds of thousands of liters of water. Mulch is used as much as possible on the winery's grounds to retain water in the soils. But with so little rain or watering, I asked Honig whether the grapes can continue to produce top quality wine.
There's a balance. The grapevines themselves are pretty drought tolerant and don't need a lot of water, and they have large root systems, so they can find some moisture within the soils on their own. But again, from a qualitative standpoint, we want to have a balance. You want to stress the vine to the point where it produces the best, most flavorful grape, but without killing the vine. So yeah, we have to be really cautious and be aware.
95% of Napa Valley vineyards are family owned. Honig says these businesses all share a responsibility to keep their vineyards running on sustainable practices that can be carried on for generations. Mark New, CGTN, Napa Valley, California.
Meanwhile, in Italy, beaches are getting cleaner. A record number of beaches have been given the prestigious Blue Flag classification this year for high quality of their water and environmental initiatives. Now, business owners hope it will help attract much-needed crowds back to Italy's shores. And CGTN Hermione Kitson reports from the coastal region of Lazio.
This year, the prestigious Blue Flag is flying proudly across 416 Italian beaches. For beach club owner Davide Camorotta, it's recognition of years of hard work.
It's as if it is a medal. This work is my life because the beach club has been in my family since forever, and this award gives us an important opportunity to restart.
A record number of new entries are in Italy's central south, such as Pescara in Abruzzo and Mintorno in Lazio. The flags are awarded by the Foundation for Environmental Education, an independent organisation comprising 77 countries worldwide.
There are 32 criteria that need to be respected. First of all, water quality, quality of the services, and environmental initiatives such as bike and pedestrian paths.
It means attention to the environment, for example, waste management and curating green spaces. It also means educational programs in schools about sustainability.
The region of Liguria once again claimed top spot with 32 beaches, followed by Campania with 19 and Tuscany and Puglia with 17. Abruzzo recorded 3 new entries to have 13 blue flags. The FEE says community cooperation is fundamental.
The objective to obtain and retain the blue flag is the responsibility of the whole community, business owners, the council and citizens.
The annual awards come as Italy's beaches opened for this season, and it's hoped the blue flag classifications will help boost the government's campaign to attract tourists. As the COVID infection rate falls, the Prime Minister has declared Italy open to international visitors with a green pass. By mid-June, most regions should be classified as low-risk white zones.
Tourists will return, and I think in much higher numbers than last year, absolutely.
High hopes for a summer that resembles pre-pandemic times. Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Rome.
Now, before the rise of steam and the Industrial Revolution, Britain's canals and waterways provided thousands of people with homes and work. Now they're seeing a sort of renaissance as many people choose to live on the water as a way to escape the pandemic. Let's find out more.
A new way of life. Record numbers of British people are now spending time on rivers and canals. Nigel Salmond and his wife just sold their house for a new home afloat.
The appeal for us is the freedom and waking up with a new back garden every morning, if that's what you want to do. Yeah, the people are just amazing. They really are.
The main canal network was built in the 1770s and was busiest during the 1800s. Industry experts reveal there are more boats on the canals now than at the height of the Industrial Revolution. A quarter of boats on the network are now homes, with some rivaling the plushest of apartments. Keith and Joe Lodge have been living afloat for more than 16 years, even though they acknowledge that the lifestyle has its challenges.
It's not as dreamy and as nice as it is today, I can tell you.
But we wouldn't change it for the world. You have to embrace the wildlife, the living on the water and everything that goes with it. I mean, It's no good living on a boat and then complaining that the ducks go past cracking all the time.
Living on water may not be everyone's idea of a perfect existence, but an increasing number of people are embarking on it as they seek to chart a new course in life. Lin, CGTN.
Well, let's move on now to commodity markets today. Oil prices little changed after strong gains in the previous two sessions. Investors expect fuel demand to surge later this year, while of course the main producers maintain a tight supply. Meanwhile, gold prices inching lower after a slight uptick in the dollar suddenly helped to offset support from lower treasury yields today. Meanwhile, copper prices falling for a third day, sitting beneath record highs as investors wait for U.S. jobs data on Friday. That, of course, will offer clues on when monetary policy could tighten. Expectations of higher interest rates could knock growth-related assets such as metals and equities going forward. Well, let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. A Dutch company offers a way to reduce electronic waste across the continent.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Now, Nigeria's creative industry has been identified as the next biggest contributor to the nation's GDP. It has the potential to cut down the country's unemployment figures by about 2.7 million by 2025. That is according to a recent report by Nigeria's leading online career portal, Gerberman. It, however, identified specific skill gap areas in need of development to maximize the potential of the sector. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
Nigeria's creative industry has always been touted as a massive employment-generating sector. It's the country's second largest employer of labor, even though it's mainly informal. Across its 5 major sectors of media, entertainment, visual arts, beauty and lifestyle, as well as tourism and hospitality, it's estimated that 4.2 million people source their livelihood from these sectors. And the new Gerberman Creative Industry Report says the figure could even be higher, identifying certain skills gap that need to be addressed to drive up the numbers.
In music, we've found gaps in project management, and it's the same with film. In film, they're looking for cinematographers, videographers, and also project managers, just like music. In tourism, customer service is the big thing. In beauty and lifestyle, we're looking for people, and as well as visual arts and handwork, people who can do makeup, who can do hairstyle, hairstylists and those kind of things.
These gaps literally translate to vacancies that need to be filled, but employers can't find the right talents. It's an irony in a country where youth unemployment is at 42.5%.
So from the report, we are seeing that there's a need for investment in skills development, and skills development in 3 areas. Employers are moving gradually away from an emphasis on just technical skills now. They're also beginning to require digital skills as well as soft skills.
In my industry, which is particularly animation, where we started from, we've discovered that there is a lack of quality animators for international work. The interest is there, but because currently there is no university in Nigeria that offers animation, so animators have to be trained by the studio. We did an extensive work to develop and deepen the talent that we have for us to be able to take on the projects that we're working on.
In the past few years, the government has been injecting funds into the creative industry. The Central Bank of Nigeria has also been injecting funds into the sector through its Creative Industry Financing Initiative, which offers long-term low-interest loans to industry players. But the Gerberman report observes that more still needs to be done.
Many times, the funding structures we have in Nigeria is very collateralized. Creativity is not something that a lot of people can bank, right, just yet, because IPs in Nigeria are not recognized as assets. So we need to work our laws or expand our laws to recognize or mandate people to recognize intellectual property as assets, and so you can collateralize on projects.
Nigeria's creative industry may just hold the answer to the country's youth unemployment challenge. One report by consulting firm PwC projects the industry will be worth over $6 billion by the end of the year. Many young people are currently leveraging on the opportunities in the industry, and both the government and the private sector are taking notice and beginning to show more interest. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Now, electronic waste around the world continues to contribute to environmental degradation. After years of struggling to make a living selling recyclable parts from electronic waste recovered in Africa, one entrepreneur has now developed a unique way out. Now, closing the loop is funding electronic waste collections in African countries, including Nigeria, Ghana and Cameroon, and it ships it to a recycling facility in Italy. Here's CGTN's Penina Karibe taking us through the green journey.
Reinhard Smith from Closing the Loop separates plastics here, showing the difference between hazardous and non-hazardous ones. He's part of the team seeking to radically change the business of electronic recycling in Africa. The company tags a fee of about $6 for a phone and $18 on a laptop purchased by any of its clients, which is then used to fund electronic waste collection.
They purchase something called waste compensation from us. They pay an extra fee on top of that purchase, and that fee is used to collect waste elsewhere. That waste collection balances out their purchase, making their purchase waste-free. That way they can say they are getting towards zero waste. They can involve their employees. All the employees with their mobile phones will know that this mobile phone did not contribute to waste in the world.
CTL now purchases old devices that are no longer usable from repair shops. The devices are then packaged in sand to prevent fire and shipped to Europe, where they are broken down responsibly. Recovered metals such as gold, silver, copper and palladium are then sold on the open market or turned into jewelry. Experts say the business model is promising because it makes consumers responsible for the waste they generate. However, investing in recycling facilities closer to the source would be better for the environment.
They are more exposed to the way the international recyclers handle this waste. So what they majorly do first is they give us this insight. Okay, the first thing is this is how we can handle this material, this is how we can process it, this is how the scavengers can actually handle this process. So the relationship has been a 360 relationship whereby they help in funding, they help in processes and all.
Electronic waste is the fastest growing source of household trash worldwide. The UN's Global E-Waste Monitor 2020 forecasts the production of electronic waste will hit 74 million metric tons by 2030.
In Africa, there's no infrastructure, there's no working financial system to collect waste. Because waste is not valuable in the first sense, you need a financial system to make that work. And unfortunately, the result has been dump sites, open burning, very hazardous processes of cleaning waste.
A recently released UN report notes the amount of electronic waste has exacerbated due to the coronavirus-induced lockdowns around the world. People stuck at home opted to declutter, and because of the lockdowns, there were fewer workers collecting and recycling the waste. Penina Karibe, CGTN.
Now, of course, before we leave you, here's a quick look at Africa's currencies today. Now, most emerging market currencies did soften today but specifically looking at South Africa's rand, after rallying to its highest in more than 2 years against the dollar on Wednesday. We saw the rand softening around 0.1% today, of course, reflecting a similar move higher in the US dollar ahead of US jobs data expected this Friday. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.